Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the FACR webinar for chapter leadership. We hope to share lots of information with you, not only in your role in mentorship with your members who are on the pathway to FACR, but also to guide you with the application review process based upon your self-determined chapter submission deadlines. Leading our webinar tonight is Dr. Robert Pyatt. He is the chair of ACR's Committee on Fellowship Credentials. Thank you for joining us and leading this webinar, Dr. Pyatt.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. We hope we give you a lot of good information tonight and help answer key questions that you may have. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please, Julie. So just a quick sketch of our fellowship committee. We have a diverse group of membership on our fellowship committee. We have diagnostic radiologists like Marcela Bonvalez and Kathleen Ward and Ellen Wolf, and we also have interventional radiologists like Zeke Silva, and we have a member of the physics section, Tony Seibert from California, and we also have radiation oncology, Bill Small from Illinois. We have a really hard-working committee. We spend many hours carefully reviewing the candidates. Just as an information piece too, each candidate that we act on is individually evaluated one by one. Last year we had about 126 or so that we did, and our actions on each candidate require a unanimous vote of the committee. Next slide, please. So to be a fellow of the ACR is one of the highest honors a member of good standing can receive. And ACR fellows also have a history of service to the college or to organized medicine, as well as teaching and or research. We'll be talking more about this as we go on here. And a little less than 10% of college members have been awarded this honor. In my opinion, I think there are more people out there that could get this award if they applied for it. So I'm hoping that we can get that over 10% in the future. Next, please. So the pathway to become a fellow involves a number of things. You can improve your candidacy by volunteering for leadership positions at the national level with the ACR, as well as locally in your state chapters and locally in your hospital system and county medical societies and all those different entities at a local level. And you can receive credit for publishing and presenting speeches, for volunteering for committees and other opportunities. And also you will get recognized for awards that you receive, be they in service, teaching, or research. And you also get a chance to meet other fellows who will serve as endorsers for future FACR applications. And the level of service is that which is beyond the scope of employment. It's not just having a job and working your job. It's, volunteering and doing extra in the various domains that we talk about. Next, please. So the requirements are, and this is a change, it used to be that you had to have a minimum of 10 consecutive years of membership. We have removed the consecutive requirement, and now it's just a minimum of 10 years of membership in whatever fashion. Now, to apply at the 10-year level, you have to have extremely high qualifications, but it does allow people who have had gaps in their membership, and which is common. A lot of people may be a member for a few years. A lot of women, they may have children and raise families. Some members have illnesses and are unable to be a member for a period of time, or they may move and forget to renew their membership for a year or two. So we've taken all that into consideration, and we have changed things. So now you do not need those consecutive years. You need a minimum of just 10 years or more post-training. That's another key piece, post-training. And international members must have a current board certification. Next slide, please. So each candidate has all of these various areas that have to be completed on the online application, and each candidate is reviewed by the members of the committee in each of these categories. So we look at the membership information, their CV, we look at their endorsements, and all of this is the big picture that we get for the candidates. And all of that is submitted first to you folks, the chapter leaders and chairs of your fellowship committees in your chapters, and you get to review all of this material. Next, please. So the CFC and the chapters work together to evaluate the candidates. You know the candidates the best and can get the first pass to really thoroughly evaluate them and then forward your decisions on to the CFC. Now, the absolute deadline is June 30th. All chapters have to have their review and recommendations completed by then, but the rest of the chapters do vary anywhere from, I would say, from April to June in terms of when their deadlines are. After you submit your recommendation to the CFC, we then take that into strong consideration and determine the candidates' nominations. We're going to go into this a little more later in this talk. The candidates, then CFC evaluates and decides on each candidate and then presents the slate to the Board of Chancellors. And typically we meet either in September or October, where I present the recommendations of the committee to the board, and we discuss it and decisions are made. And then after that, the chapters and the candidates are notified in writing in November or December. Next slide, please. So the chapters play a really vital role in screening all of the candidates from your state chapters and in your decision making. So it's important that your chapter knows the deadline that you have for your chapter, and it varies from chapter to chapter. Ideally, the chapter leadership positions are filled prior to receiving the application, so there's not a changeover in leadership of the chapter while this review of the candidates is going on. We would prefer to have that completed prior to the candidates getting evaluated. We also think it's a very good idea to have the chair of the fellowship committee actually be an FACR person, if that's possible. We think that's helpful, as that person has been through the process, is familiar with it, and can provide the best leadership if it's possible. So you also, as a chapter, have the greatest familiarity with the members of your chapter and can provide insight into their eligibility and so forth. Now, a chapter officer that is an ACR fellow can serve as an endorser, and in so doing, you have to recuse yourself during the chapter review of that particular candidate. The same thing applies to the CFC. If any of us write a letter for a candidate, we have to recuse ourselves from the discussion and voting on that candidate. Now, the nomination criteria are very, very helpful in terms of deciding whether the candidate is qualified at the appropriate year level. We're going to talk about that with some examples here in a moment. So it's very much objective criteria. It's not a comparison of a candidate versus another candidate. It's not a comparison between candidates. It's a comparison of that candidate individually on his or her accomplishments relative to the nomination criteria and the other items like the professionalism and so forth. Next slide. Yeah, perfect. So here's a question for everyone. Do you know your chapter's deadline for receiving the FACR applications? Do you know the month and day or not? So we'll give you a moment to answer that. I'll wait for you there on that, Julie. Okay, so yes, I know the month and day, about 55%, and I do not know 45%. And Julie has last year's data, which is very similar. I don't know if you have a slide for that, Julie, but last year it was 50%, so 55% this year. So it's really important to get that month and day established, the deadline, very important. Just so you know, too, I'll be putting a posting on the open forum in the next few days, announcing and encouraging members throughout the college to apply to their state chapters. And in that, I will encourage members to be sure they know their chapter deadlines. So it's very important that we get that established and known through your chapters. Next slide, please. So the nomination criteria. So 10 to 11 years is the extraordinary category, and we're going to give you some examples of that here in a minute. So as time goes on, 20 years and above, the requirements, the nomination criteria are not as stringent and difficult as they are at the 10 to 11 years. You'll see here in a moment what we mean by extraordinary. Now, it's not unusual. We do have a number of candidates who apply at the 10 to 11 year level or 12 to 14 year level. And they might not meet the criteria for that level, but they might meet it like for the next level. So say they apply with 13 years in, and they really meet the criteria at 15 years, 2 years later. Otherwise, everything else is in order. So we will approve candidates, but defer them for 2 years to get their FACR honor at the appropriate year interval. So that would be 15 years for that example. Okay, next slide. So just to show this in another fashion, for 10 to 11 years, very strong letters supporting the nominees' extraordinary accomplishments and credentials are essential. We'll show you this in a little more detail here in a moment. And as you proceed, you can see the level of nomination criteria accomplishments are not as difficult, I guess I'd say, like commendable for 18 to 19 years, 20 plus years. Longstanding record of service and contributions. So, okay, now, this is a really important slide, and this is on the ACR website, and I encourage you to be very familiar with this. So, the domains, there are 3 domains. On the left-hand side, there's service, and then below that is teaching, and then below that is research. So there are 3 domains, and then we'll go back to the top there, Julie. And then as you go across, so for example, at the 10 to 11 year record, you have to have a prominent national leadership role, for example, be on the board of chancellors, or serve as a prominent leader in other national or international radiology or medical organizations, or receive awards, service awards from an international radiology or medical organization, like the gold medal from the RSNA or the gold medal from the European Society of Radiology, things like that. That's like, you know, it's a pretty high bar. Below that, you can see in teaching, international recognition in teaching. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have been on speaking tours in Spain and Italy and China and so forth, you know. That's the kind of thing that would be evaluated at that level. Or further down in research, again, international recognition for research. You know, this is like extremely well-known critical research and imaging and so forth. So that's the highest bar, and it's truly incredible what the candidates that we see that accomplish this. It is incredible to see how much work they've done, and these are people that most of you would have read about. You would have seen their publications and heard about these people, and we have some amazing people in the ACR that apply. So again, and this is a little more detail here, so you can see 10 to 11 year group, prominent national leadership roles. Go further down to research, radiology, or contributions to the literature. So these are people that may have published, you know, dozens and dozens of articles in many different journals, book chapters, and so forth. And also we have that category for the military service. So if you have military service, you can also be recognized, and this is a new area that we've developed over the last couple of years, and that is members of the military. We have some tremendous people there, and they've accomplished some amazing things, and we are now recognizing that as part of the criteria, be it in the 10 to 11 year group, the 12 to 14 year group. It progresses all the way down to the 20 plus years for the military folks as well. So, and you can see now up at the top there, this is the 12 to 14 year group. So the first 3 bullet points or so were for the 10 to 11 year. And then further down below that, where Julie is pointing there, that major national office or major leadership role, executive level leadership role in a large health system. So maybe you're the executive VP, or maybe you're the practice leader of a clinical group of physicians and providers, you know, maybe 150, 300 people, chief medical director. These are people who are major physician leaders in large health systems, and service awards from national or medical organizations. So, and further up, gold medal from international. So you can see how the 12 to 14-year group moves from international to national. Similarly, down below that in the areas of teaching and research. And likewise in the military, depending on which button you click on, you'll get the Army example or the Navy example and so forth. So that's a very helpful slide. Now, this is another new area that you will see this year, professionalism. We have included professionalism as a component that is evaluated. The letters of endorsement have to address professionalism. The candidate has to attest to professionalism. And professionalism represents a duty to those we serve, our patients, a duty to those at whose pleasure we serve our society, and a duty to those with whom we serve our colleagues and our profession itself. So do you affirm your ethical behavior in the profession, including the areas of integrity, competence, empathy, responsibility, and intellectual development? And you can see how there's an attestation for that. We think this is a very important piece of the FACR that we've improved on. Now, those of you that are writing an endorsement letter, that have been asked to write an endorsement letter by the candidate, will receive an email, and it'll say, like you read here, you know, so-and-so is applying to become a fellow of the ACR and would be honored if you would write an endorsement letter. I know various friends of mine and myself have been starting to receive these from candidates who have approached us for letters of endorsement, and you will be too. And it's very simple to do. You just click on that hot link here, and it'll take you right to the candidate's page. You have to log into the ACR, but it'll take you right to the candidate's application. You can review their CV and other items in there. There we go. Thank you, Julie. You can review their CV and qualifications, and then you can upload your letter of endorsement. You also have to answer the questions down below, whether you are or are not in the business practice with the candidate, with the fellow candidate. And then attestation, you agree to endorse the nomination. But it's a very nice electronic process, nice and smooth. And you also get a chance to review the candidate's CV and details, which is helpful as you write your letter. Okay, next. Now, and then the chapter leaders will be getting a notice that a member of your chapter has submitted an FACR application for review. And you and the folks involved in the fellowship committee in the chapters will be able to review the applications that have been submitted. We're going to show you in the next screen what that looks like. So here's the screen. When you click on the hot link, it'll take you to this, My Judging Assignments. And you'll be able to see which ones you have. And here's how it looks. You get a list of candidates on the left there. John Blank, MD, Robert Blank, MD. And if you want to review the application, which is a really thorough review, you click on View Application. Now on the right side, just go back 1 second, Julie. On the right side there, you can see Refine Your Search. So you can actually, if you click on Scored or Unscored, you can, if you've already scored up some candidates, they may still show up unless you seek the ones that are unscored. Yes, thanks for highlighting that, Julie. Or you can search a certain candidate, you know, Smith, Mary Smith, or whatever. But anyhow, once you click on the box View Application, you get the whole application, all the materials. It's really fantastic. You get a chance to really review everything about the candidate, including the letters of endorsement. And also you get to see exactly on this next box, approved as chapter nominee. So this is a very critical part. The chapter's decision on the candidate is one of the very important things that we look at. There are basically 3 options. The chapter, you can approve as a chapter nominee, you can approve, concur with fellows, concur, or you can deny the application, reject it. But this is a very important decision point for the chapter. You have to click on that list there that drops down and make a decision on that box. And I guess go to the next one, please, Julie. Yeah, so that drop-down box has these three options: approve as chapter nominee, approve as concur with fellows, or not approved. And whatever the chapter decision is, that is one of the key elements that the CFC looks at. How did the chapter decide on this candidate? Because we know you probably know the candidate best, and you help guide us in terms of decisions on these candidates. Now, this is another important point down there at the bottom. The CFC gives more weight if you decide to make the candidate a chapter nominee rather than concur with fellows. Chapter nominee carries the highest weight for that candidate. If you feel strongly for the candidate, chapter nominee is what you want to pick. If you don't know the candidate as well or not as strong, but you still support it, but you're not as strong, then you pick concur with fellows. On the other hand, if you do not feel the candidate meets the qualifications, then not approved. And then the chapter notifies the applicant. So that's another piece there. If the candidate is not approved, then the requirement is for the chapter to notify the applicant. Like I discussed there in the middle one, concur with fellows. So the chapter might not be aware of the individual applied, but agrees with the fellows and that endorse the application and also the review of the nomination criteria that the candidate is approved, but just not as strongly because they might not know the candidate as well, or maybe feel the qualifications are not as strong, but it's still approved. Now, again, I want to emphasize that this is, you do not want to be comparing candidate against candidate. You want to, each candidate is to be compared and against the nomination criteria, not against another candidate, because you will have some candidates who definitely will meet the nomination criteria, but they may not be as strong as the one you just approved a moment ago. And you'll be like, well, you know, this candidate, he didn't do as many things in the nomination criteria as the last candidate. And you want to not go down that path and, you know, underscore the second candidate. If that candidate meets the nomination criteria, then he or she has met the criteria, and that should help you make your decision. Be careful not to do a comparison of candidates against candidates. That's one of the issues that Julie and I have experienced over the last few years. Okay, I think that's good for that slide.
So Bob, I will do another poll for everyone. And at this time, I
Okay.
can remind everyone there is an opportunity to post questions. So from your device, if you select on questions and type and send a message, it will only display to me, and I'll be reading them at the end of this webinar for Dr. Pyatt to answer. For now, we will do one more poll.
Okay, and answer is, okay, President, Vice President 46, Secretary 54, Treasurer 46, Fellowship Chairperson 100%. Hey, that's pretty good, 100%. So the answer is any of those people can write a letter, an FACR recommendation, if they are FACR. So now, one of the things that we have, here's a common issue that occurs, especially in some of the smaller chapters or in some of the smaller groups, where there might be a 4-person group and only one or none of the members of the group are FACR, and a candidate will want to know, I don't know anybody that has FACR. How can I get my letters of endorsement? So it is okay for the candidate to request from the state chapter leadership or the fellowship chair, would you be willing to write a letter of endorsement for me? That request is okay. Now, we would ask the individuals to please consider that, because some people are in a very difficult situation where they don't know anybody with FACR and they need to get those minimum of 2 letters. Sometimes candidates can't find them, and they will come to Julie or myself and seek candidates that can help them get their minimum of 2 letters in, and we have helped them over the years find somebody either from their state that they might have forgotten about, that they know, an old friend or something, or sometimes like I will step in and review the candidate, and if I feel the candidate is qualified and has met the criteria and is a good candidate, I will be willing to write a letter. But I would encourage each of the state chapter leaders and fellowship chairs to do what you can to assist those applicants who may be having trouble finding the minimum of 2 people to write their letters of endorsement. Okay, next slide, please, Julie. So it is now open season for the FACR candidates to apply, and Julie has received a number already. I think last I heard from Julie was around 50 or in some degree of completion, partially completed or completed. And typically we have anywhere from 115 to 130 people apply each year, but we're hoping this year, we hope we'll set a record and get more people than ever before applying because of the change in the minimum 10-year eligibility no longer being consecutive. We are hoping that we will have more people applying. We also believe that there are many people out there who meet the qualifications, both in terms of years of membership and in accomplishments in the nomination criteria, but for whatever reason, they just don't apply. And we're hoping that we can encourage chapter leaders to encourage your members throughout your chapter to apply for this wonderful honor.
There are currently members from 25 chapters that either have a pending application that they're actively completing or those who have completed an application. So we do have members from 25 chapters already applying. So many of you will be receiving applications this year to review.
That's great. And I hope to also, again, put something on the open forum posting, including a hot link to this application page for the FACR. I think that would facilitate people applying to the FACR process. Okay, I think we can, well, let's see, Julie, the second bullet there. Retired members are not eligible to apply, yet members who retire in good standing can retain their FACR honor. To prepare for your application, gather your background information, honors, awards, presentations, certifications, and so forth, and be sure to encourage the members of your chapter. You need to encourage them as they go through their career to keep their CV updated if they have a paper published, or if they are named chairperson for a committee, or if they serve on an ACR committee or state chapter committee, to be sure to record that. So when the time comes, they have this information in their file, on their record, and it makes it very easy to complete the application candidacy. And of course, you need to encourage members in your state to be aware of the deadline. Some people apply late and just miss the deadline, unfortunately. So do the best you can with communicating your deadlines to the candidates. And of course, if they have questions also, Julie and I are very available to help anybody that has questions. Next slide. So we encourage chapter members to volunteer for leadership positions. It's getting to be that time in the year, March and April, when people start rotating off ACR committees and state chapter committees, and new people are interested. The new younger people coming along want to get involved, and we would encourage you to help the people that are seeking to be serving on committees, either as a member or as a leader. And of course, always encourage your chapter members to publish in peer-reviewed journals. If they teach a course, they will get credit for that. If they present at a regional conference or at a local Rentgen society, like the Philadelphia Rentgen Society or whatever, that counts. And we encourage you as chapter leaders, please mentor the early career radiologists and help them along, just like the people that help you along to get to where you are now. We want to encourage and mentor more early career radiologists. Next slide, please. So, takeaway points from tonight. Identify your chapter's FACR application deadline and amend the date if you have to, and update the FACR administration with Julie. encourage your chapter members to apply. We believe there are more people out there that deserve the award than there are applying. And I really believe there's many more than are eligible that just don't apply. So please encourage them. We are trying to make the process as smooth and seamless as it can be, and it is really works pretty well now, the new application, online application. Chapter officers who are fellows may serve as endorsers. So that's an important point tonight also. But if you are an endorser, you cannot participate in the discussion or voting for that particular candidate. You have to recuse yourself for that candidate. The nomination criteria are extremely important, and Julie has updated those so they are, so whatever you accomplish in the earlier years, be it the 10 to 11, 11 to 12 to 14, and so forth, it's cumulative. So if you're applying at the 18 to 19 year level, all of the preceding nomination criteria will also be visible at the 18 to 19 year level, and you may have achieved some of them as well. So we've tried to make it easier to get recognition for the criteria that you've earned. And lastly, decisions by the chapter. These three decisions are your options. The strongest support for a candidate is chapter nominee. Approvers concur with fellows does account. It is approved. It's just not as strong as chapter nominee. And then the third option is not approved, at which point you need to notify the candidate. Okay, and next slide, I think that's it. Yep. Okay, so we get to the questions now.
Our first question asks, where would a fellow of the Society of Interventional Radiology be categorized in years of service on the nomination criteria chart? I think the question asks for those with an SIR membership, how would that translate for an ACR membership for fellow?
So what I would say to that, if they have served as a leader in some fashion, either be it as a member of the leadership group, president of the SIR, or secretary treasurer of the SIR, or if they've served in a leadership role, for example, chairing economics committee of the SIR, or chairing some other committee of the SIR, those would be important recognitions that would fall into the various categories and the nomination criteria. Now, just being a member of the SIR without any of those other pieces would not count, because the SIR is a different organization than the ACR. Now, the ACR, in the 20-plus year category, if you have served just as a member of a committee, then you will be you'll get recognition for that. You don't have to be the chair, but there are many ways in the SIR that you can get credit towards the FACR honor, and not just SIR either. We see a number of people from the the Pediatric Society and the RSNA and numerous others, like 50 or 52 different radiology-related organizations. So if you serve as an officer or chair in those, you will get credit. It's amazing. You'll see the candidates that we review have some amazing hard work and across the field in imaging and in physics and nuclear medicine, IR. Yep. Okay, next question.
How does a member get a letter of recommendation submitted if the CV is sent to a chapter, yet the chapter does not act until May or June? This might be, Dr. Pyatt, going back to a previous method of becoming an FACR where chapters were nominating its members, where currently any eligible member may begin an application and then seek letters of recommendation thereafter. This seems to suggest that some members might still be sending a CV to a chapter to seek a recommendation for fellowship. We might want to clarify the current process.
Right. So the current process, anybody that wants to apply goes to that website, the one that Julie had on the screen a few slides back, and you apply that website, and you determine who you want to have provide you with your letter of endorsement. And now, Julie, once the application is completed, then it goes to the state chapter. Is that right? In other words, a partially completed application does not, the state chapter is not notified. Is that
Correct.
right?
An application will not be forwarded to a chapter until it has at least 2 endorsement letters attached to it.
Right. So that's how the process currently works. Now, if the candidate doesn't know anybody to write a letter, and that does happen, it's not that rare, fairly often. So that candidate can then contact the state chapter and say, I don't know anybody. I'm a solo practitioner out here in a rural hospital, and I don't know anybody. How do I get my 2 letters? Can you help me with that? So the chapter leaders can speak to that and hopefully provide some assistance in some fashion to get those 2 letters accomplished. Now, if the state chapter leaders are at a loss and that none of them have FACR and they don't know anybody that has FACR, if they're in a big loss for that, then contact Julie and I and we will assist on that. But that candidate may not be able to complete his or her application until they file the minimum of 2 letters. Otherwise, that will not be forwarded to the state chapter for their review. So the candidate may do partially online completion, just missing those things, and have to directly contact the chapter leadership. Hopefully that answered that question adequately.
For members with discontinued membership, where do they find out how many years total they have accrued? I can answer this one. For any member that is wanting to determine their eligibility, please refer that member to send an email to me at FACR@acr.org to make an eligibility inquiry, and I can get in touch directly with that member after reviewing their ACR profile.
Yeah, that's a fairly common question that Julie gets. And then they know which level category for the nomination criteria where they are best able to apply. Another piece of this, again, that we talked about earlier in the presentation was if you have somebody that's applying at the 14 to 16 year level and they really should be 18 to 19 or 17 to 18, please help guide them to apply in the proper year level where they are appropriately qualified. Again, the CFC comes across a number of candidates each year who have met the criteria but not at the right year level, so we may approve them, and we can approve them up to 3 years deferral. Sometimes we approve them with a 1-year deferral, a 2-year deferral, or a 3-year deferral. But if it's more than 3 years, then we cannot approve them and they have to apply again in the subsequent years.
May a radiologist from England become an ACR member and attain FACR if the certification is from the Royal College of, it's abbreviated P&S. There are some international board certifications that you could speak to, Bob.
Yes, that's the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons. And I believe the answer to that would be yes, provided they've met the various criteria and so forth that we have. And of course, we do have a Canadian chapter, and there are numerous Canadians that receive the FACR award through their CAR, Canadian Association of Radiologists chapter.
Yes, the fellowship guidelines are available at acr.org/FACR, and there are eligibility criteria there, especially those related to international members. One last question. My impression from the chapter fellowship chair is they are seeking my CV before an application process to ACR. Should an applicant start at the ACR website while submitting a CV to chapter? Is this usurping the chapter practice?
Well, I think the way I would answer that is the fellowship website that we've referred to here tonight captures all of the candidates' information, not just the CV, but a whole bunch of other information in terms of number of years of membership, awards, honors. It's quite a list. You saw one of the early slides had about, I don't know, maybe 14, 16 areas that we collect information on. So it's not just the CV. And now certainly I would not discourage them from contacting their chapter fellowship, certainly, if they had questions or wanted to find out if they should apply or not. I mean, there may be some very good questions that the chapter leadership, the chapter fellowship chair could be very helpful with. So Certainly on a dual parallel path, talking to the chapter people certainly would be okay, but the applying it to the online application also captures everything, so the candidate really gets to demonstrate their full assortment of all of the things they've done, which then is communicated, of course, to the chapter. So the chapter gets to see everything, not just the CV,
Okay, there are no further questions at this time.
Great, okay. Last chance. Anybody else have a question? We hope this has been helpful to this evening. We encourage your chapters to please get the word out. We want to break all records and get more candidates than ever to apply this year and to receive the award. We believe that there are many deserving members out there who just need to apply, basically. So thank you for your attention tonight. Thanks for the good questions. We are here to serve and help you. And we'll give any last chance for a question. Looks like nothing coming through, Julie.
No, just lots of thanks for having the webinar. So we're glad to have helped everyone. This recording will be on ACR's YouTube channel within a week once we can get this downloaded. So you could look for this slideshow and recording as a resource as you go through your chapter review process this spring.
Good luck, and we hope you can get many candidates to apply. Thank you.
Thank you.